We're starting to see some real signs of winter show up as we move into November. To start the month, we'll have a dip in the jet stream that allows below average temperatures to enter the eastern half of the US, and we could even see our first snowfall in parts of the US, but especially through parts of southern Canada over the next few weeks. I'm meteorologist AJ Waterman. Let's talk more about this winter like pattern heading into November. So, to start the month, we will have cooler than average temperatures across a good portion of the eastern half of the US. This is just November 1st through the 4th, and you can see well below average temperatures possible for places like Florida, even into parts of Georgia, Alabama, and South Carolina. So, some really chilly stuff setting up along the East Coast. And even more so heading further into the month here, as well below average temperatures will be possible across a good portion of the East Coast, and this could set the stage for some potential snow in spots as well, especially for the higher elevations of the Appalachians. Meanwhile, the West Coast remains fairly mild, and this could be a taste of the winter pattern that we could see heading into the season ahead. However, it is still November, so it's not quite the start of winter, and we can still get warm ups and pattern changes, and that's what we'll have going into the upcoming weeks. So, less reliant on those big pattern changes as we discussed in our winter outlook in the month of November, but you can get some opportunities of winter weather to show up, which we have here. But eventually, mid to late month, we will see a substantial warm up across a good portion of the country, and then potentially another big cool down coming into December. So, we'll see what happens over the next few weeks. For now, the dominant pattern remains a trough or a dip in the jet stream that you can see across a good portion of the eastern US and the Midwest, and that will provide the cooler than average temperatures across a good portion of this region. Meanwhile, a ridge will be building across a good portion of the West Coast and Rockies, and that will keep things relatively warmer than average. So as we head through the first half of November, you can see that dip or trough in the jet stream showing up a few times here. This goes all the way through the 10th of November. We do see that brief warm up, but there's also going to be another cool down ahead, especially towards the 10th, 11th, and 12th of the month. So we will see another cool down and potentially more opportunities of snow for parts of the Northeast, especially in the higher elevations. So this is pretty early for the season. It's not completely unusual, but just gives us an idea that we're expected to see a cool and average start to the month. And then eventually this pattern will shift a bit, allowing the warmer air to spill in from the West Coast, and the West Coast will get cooler. And then we'll potentially see another shot of this pattern by the end of the month. Even though we're not in November yet, we will see some cooler than average conditions across a good portion of the southeast tonight. That means a lot of 40s on the board and even some 50s for Florida. And that is some pretty chilly stuff as we work our way through the next few weeks. We could see several more nights like this and maybe even some nights getting down into the 30s. Now adding precipitation chances to this pattern, you can see there's actually not a whole lot going on across the country with the exception of the Northeast, seeing one big storm system potentially bring a little bit of snow on the backside for parts of the Appalachians going up into New York State and northern New England. And then as we push through the next several days, it's actually a quieter than average pattern overall. But notice how we'll see some storm development from the Gulf going up into the Northeast. That'll be the general pattern here. And by mid-month, we could see another opportunity of snow around the 10th. So this pattern isn't conducive of severe weather, which is a good thing, but it does give us an opportunity, at least in parts of the Northeast, the higher elevations of the Appalachians, to potentially see the first snowfall of the year, which will be great for ski resorts. Meanwhile, the Northwest remains fairly active with a few more weather systems moving in there, even though the rest of the West Coast and the Rockies will remain mild and dry. At least the Northwest will see more opportunities of rain and even more snowfall. And you can see that snowpack stretching from Alaska all the way through British Columbia and the Northwest. A decent snowpack out here, especially for the higher elevations. But for the most part, this is around average for a good portion of this region. There are some places that have seen above average snow. But with a snowpack like this and the pattern shifting a bit, a lot of this cold air and potentially the snowfall will start moving a bit eastward across parts of central Canada and then eventually into southern Canada. So as we take a look at the snow depth forecast for southern Canada, we will start to see some snow opportunities work their way in. So winter will start for a good portion of central Canada going into places like New Brunswick, and then eventually we will see another batch of snow from another weather system work its way south with this colder pattern and could even make its way into the Northeast. This model, I think, is a little overdone in terms of the snowfall across parts of the Appalachians. I do think this will be more centered to the higher elevations here, but it's an indication that there is potential to see some snow as we head through the next week and a half here. So this will be around the 10th of November, but a better chance, certainly a decent chance for some snow on the ground through parts of central and even southern Canada. But a part of this pattern change is this big weather system moving through the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, which will actually have a chance to produce some isolated tornadoes tomorrow. This is not only a part of the system itself, but Melissa throwing some tropical moisture at the system, which will enhance some of the thunderstorm activity, a part of the system as it moves to the Northeast. So a low chance, non-zero chance of a tornado for this area, highlighted in green, as we move through the day tomorrow. And you can see with future radar here over the next several hours that weather system will be pushing north going into early Thursday morning. There could be some areas where we do see some isolated rotation. This will be at about 6 to 7 a.m., stretching all the way into the early afternoon. That system will start to scoop up that moisture from Melissa, as you can see from the ocean, and throw it all the way up to places like New York City going into New England. There may even be some isolated flash flooding, although it doesn't look like a substantial risk right now. It wouldn't surprise me, especially for southern New England, that does get a decent amount of that Melissa moisture. And then the system will start to push out, but the cooler air will actually start to settle in on the backside. As you can see, all that rain going through parts of western New York, Pennsylvania, even into parts of southern Canada. Some of that rain actually turns into a little bit of snow for the higher elevations going into Saturday's forecast. But here's a look at that rotation opportunity. This is storm helicity, which is basically the rotation that a thunderstorm can pick up, the maximum amount. And you can see some of the locations here going through parts of Maryland and even into parts of southern Pennsylvania and Delaware. Those locations could see a very small chance of a brief spin-up tornado. These are not going to be big or destructive, but it's possible to see that. But as the area continues to work its way north, the ingredients start to wane down quite a bit going up into New York and into New England. But this system is going to produce a lot of wind. Of course, ahead of it, very warm, tropical air. Behind it, much colder, as that winter-like pattern tries to settle in. The system is basically going to slingshot it out of parts of southern Canada, and that will come with a decent amount of wind. So there'll be some stronger wind gusts out ahead of this thing, upwards of 50 miles per hour for parts of New England as the storm system comes in. And then behind it, you'll see some 40 to 30 mile per hour gusts across a good portion of the Northeast, with those winds coming in out of the west, trying to cool things down and kick that tropical moisture out of the region. And this is the rainfall forecast through Friday. As you can see, impressive rainfall amounts from this system, upwards of 3, even 4 inches of rain for parts of New York going into New England, even Pennsylvania as well. So this will be producing a decent amount of rain. It doesn't come down all at once, but there'll be several hours of this heavy rain that is expected. Like I said, there's a potential for some isolated flooding. I don't think it'll be widespread, but once the system is out of here, it does get a lot colder, so we will start to see that cool down right behind this system. And here's the snowfall forecast for parts of northern New England. Not a whole lot, but maybe a couple of inches for some of the higher elevations, especially the ski resorts will be happy about this. And we actually have enough cold air and even moisture well behind this system over the Dakotas. It's another low pressure system that basically gets scooped up by the one to the east, but it will be producing a little bit of snow through parts of the Dakotas and potentially a few inches over the northern plains. And there's a look at that snowfall forecast. Not a lot, maybe an inch or two, but if you go up into parts of southern Canada, a better chance of actually seeing a decent accumulation from this little system moving through, but just give us an indication of that cold air and that taste of winter that's trying to form here going into the first week of November. So looking ahead, we'll be tracking the cold air over the next few days and chances of snow as we'll start to see that colder air meet up with some of the moisture and produce a little bit of snow for parts of the higher elevations, especially for the Appalachians and even for parts of the Northwest and parts of the Rockies. And then the active Northwest pattern will continue as we see more systems move in there. And then we have a pattern change mid-month where it looks like we'll see milder than average conditions. So if you're not ready for winter quite yet, we will see one last warm-up, it looks like, towards mid to late November. So that'll heat things up a bit before we cool things down heading into December. And if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out more of our video forecasts here and more updates over the next several days.